The sun scorched the dusty ground of Ironridge Arena, kicking up clouds of heat and grit with every stomp of cowboy boots. Men in white hats leaned against the wooden rails, eyes narrowed under the brim as the auctioneer's chant echoed through the warm Texas air. Horses were paraded in one by one, muscles taut, eyes wild. It was a day for business, bloodlines, and bold bids. No one noticed the boy sitting in the shadows of the last bleacher, his ribs sharp beneath a dusty blue shirt and his eyes fixed like steel on the center ring. His name was Noa Blackthorn, and no one knew it. He was just a thin, silent figure with sunburned cheeks, a worn belt buckle, and hunger deep in his belly. He hadn't eaten since the day before. His boots were too big, his jeans too short, and his past was something he never talked about. No parents. No papers. Just a name, and even that barely whispered. He'd been sleeping in an abandoned hay shed behind the fairgrounds, clutching nothing but a dream he didn't understand yet. Then Ashbolt came into the ring. The black stallion stormed the arena like a wildfire. Hooves slammed into the dirt, eyes blazing, foam flying from his mouth. Two handlers held tight on the reins, but the beast fought with every muscle. People gasped. A few laughed. "Put him down before he kills someone," someone muttered. But Noa didn't move. He sat frozen, heart pounding, staring into the eyes of that animal. And in one electric second, Ashbolt stopped. His eyes locked onto Noah's. Time paused. The auctioneer, unsure, cleared his throat. "No bids? Lot 27 will be removed." Noa stood up. He didn't shout. He didn't even speak. He just raised one trembling hand high in the air. The crowd turned toward him, half amused, half annoyed. "What's that kid doing?" a man muttered. The auctioneer narrowed his eyes. "Son, you got money to back that hand?" Noa didn't blink. He walked slowly to the fence and stared down Ashbolt, unflinching. The stallion shifted, sniffed the air, and lowered his head. From the back of the crowd, a voice cut through the silence. Thorn Vexmore, a weathered old rancher with a face like cracked leather, stepped forward. "If that horse picked the boy," he said, "I'll cover the bid." The entire arena fell silent. Noa climbed through the gate, his steps sure, heart in his throat. He approached Ashbolt like he'd known him forever. And as the dust swirled around their feet, the horse knelt before him. And no one dared laugh again. Ashbolt's breath was hot against Noah's skin as the boy gently placed a hand on the horse's neck. The moment felt unreal, too quiet for such a wild place. Around them, the crowd stood frozen, their expressions caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. No one spoke. Even the auctioneer lowered his gavel, unsure of what rule had just been broken or created. Noah's hand didn't tremble now. The way he touched Ashbolt, like he wasn't taming the horse, but listening to him, left even the old ranchers speechless. Thorn Vexmore stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, his boots thudding against the dry earth. His face was unreadable, but his eyes studied Noa carefully. "What's your name, boy?" he asked. Noa glanced over his shoulder. "Noa Blackthorn." A murmur rippled through a few older men nearby. Blackthorn was a name not heard around these parts in a long time. Thorn's jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. "You got a place to take him?" Noa hesitated. His silence was answer enough. Thorn let out a long breath, the kind that carried history. "Then you'll come with me." It wasn't a question. Before Noa could speak, the older man was already turning to leave. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispers trailing behind them like the dust in the air. Jet Hollowridge, tall and broad-shouldered, watched from across the arena with narrowed eyes and a sneer tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Vexmoor's going soft," he muttered to Vesper Ironridge, the man in charge of the auction grounds. Vesper didn't reply. His focus was still locked on Noa and Ashbolt, his expression unreadable, his silence deliberate. As they loaded Ashbolt into the trailer behind Thorn's rusted pickup, Mira Dreadvale approached. She was the town's veterinarian, sharp-minded, calm-eyed, and unafraid to speak her mind. "That horse isn't just wild, Thorn," she said, brushing ash and sweat from her brow. "He's been abused. Scars on his back, ribs, legs. Someone tried to break him the wrong way." She looked down at Noa, who listened without blinking. "He won't be easy." Thorn glanced at the boy. "Neither will he." On the drive to Vexmore Ranch, the silence between them was filled only by the hum of the tires and the occasional groan of old shocks. Noa stared out the window, watching the flat Texas plains pass like pages in a book he hadn't been allowed to read. He didn't ask questions. Thorn didn't offer stories. But something heavy hung in the space between them, a weight neither knew how to name just yet. And far behind them, still watching from the gate of the auction yard, Rowan Ashgrave stood with his arms crossed, the silver star of the sheriff pinned to his chest, and something like dread flickering in his eyes. The Vexmore ranch sat miles beyond the edge of the town, hidden between cracked hills and wind-twisted oaks. The fences were old but sturdy, the barns sun-bleached and leaning like tired old men. Noa stepped out of the truck and looked around, taking in the silence. It was the kind of quiet that carried weight, like the land remembered too much. Ashbolt, still in the trailer, let out a long, low snort, almost as if he recognized the place. Noa felt it too. Not fear, exactly, but something close to it. Thorn led Ashbolt to the main corral without a word. Noa followed, hands in his pockets. The sky had shifted, clouds rolling in thick and gray above the open fields. "You'll sleep in the loft," Thorn finally muttered, pointing toward the hay barn. "You feed him. Water him. Keep your hands outta trouble. We'll see what happens." Noa nodded, saying nothing. He didn't want to ask for more than he'd been given. But something about the place felt familiar in a way he couldn't explain. Inside the barn, an old saddle hung from a rusted hook, its leather cracked and curling. Dust clung to every surface. In the loft above, a narrow mattress lay in the corner, thin but dry. Noa ran his hand over the rough wooden wall, eyes tracing initials carved decades ago. Some were faded beyond reading, others still sharp, TV. And, just beneath it, HB. He stared at those letters for a long time. A strange ache stirred in his chest. Back outside, Celine Grimsbane was waiting on the porch of the main house. She wore a long, dark coat despite the heat, and her gray-streaked hair was braided tight. "You bringing ghosts back with you now, Thorn?" she asked softly, not unkindly. Thorn didn't answer, just brushed past her. Celine turned her eyes on Noa and studied him with a gaze that felt like it could see straight through skin and bone. "You've got your mother's eyes," she whispered, then disappeared into the house before he could ask what she meant. That night, lightning crawled across the sky like veins of fire. Noa couldn't sleep. He lay on the thin mattress, listening to Ashbolt shift and snort in the corral below. Something about the horse's presence made him feel less alone. But questions churned in his head, about this ranch, the names carved in wood, and the woman's strange words. Who was HB? Why did this place feel like a memory? And why did it feel like someone was waiting for him to remember? Morning broke over Vexmore Ranch with a sky the color of cold steel. Noa was up before the sun, his boots barely making a sound as he crossed the dirt toward the corral. Ashbolt stood still in the mist, as if waiting. When Noa approached, the stallion lowered his head slowly, allowing the boy to place a hand on his muzzle. Noa whispered nothing in particular, just sounds, breath, presence. They didn't need words. Their silence spoke loud enough. He spent the morning cleaning out the troughs and brushing Ashbolt's coat, careful over the old scars Mira had pointed out. Each mark felt like a story someone had tried to erase. Thorn watched from a distance, leaning on the fence, face unreadable. There was something in his stare, not quite suspicion, but not trust either. Just waiting. Testing. "You work quiet," Thorn said eventually. "That horse listens to you. Can't decide if that's a gift or a warning." By mid-afternoon, a black pickup truck rumbled up the dirt road, kicking dust into the sky. Noah looked up as the truck came to a stop, and Jet Hollowridge stepped out. Tall, lean, and dressed too sharp for the dirt, Jet scanned the ranch like he owned it. "Heard you made quite the scene at the auction," he said to Thorn with a half-smile. Then his eyes found Noah. "So this is the boy who tames monsters." There was something mocking in his voice, even when he smiled. Jet turned toward Ashbolt, stepping close, hand extended like a challenge. The horse recoiled instantly, ears pinned. "Still full of fire, huh?" Jet muttered, almost to himself. "You sure he's worth the trouble?" Thorn didn't answer, but Noah stepped forward, his posture straight. "He's not the one causing trouble," Noah said, voice calm but firm. Jet's smile faltered, and something darker flickered behind his eyes. "Careful, kid. You've got sharp teeth for someone still learning to bite." After Jet drove off, Thorn stayed quiet for a while. Noah returned to brushing Ashbolt, but his mind wasn't settled. That man, Jet, had known Ashbolt before, and he hadn't liked seeing the horse alive, much less calm. Noah felt it in his gut. There was history there. Maybe violence. Maybe more. And as dusk crept over the land, a figure watched from the edge of the tree line. Rowan Ashgrave, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He hadn't come to visit. He hadn't come to warn. He was simply watching, as if waiting for something old to rise again. The rain came hard that night. It drummed against the barn roof like angry fists, loud enough to drown out thoughts. Noah lay awake in the loft, watching water drip through a crack in the wood above his head. Sleep wouldn't come. Not with the storm, and not with the questions. His fingers traced the carved initials again. HB something about them gnawed at him. He didn't know why, but he couldn't stop thinking about that name. Driven by a pull he didn't understand, Noah climbed down from the loft with a lantern and walked to the far corner of the barn. Beneath a pile of rotting burlap, he noticed a floorboard loose at the edge. It looked like it had been pried up before. He knelt, hands shaking, and pulled it open. The smell of damp earth and old paper rose up. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and tied with twine, was a single folded letter. The paper was brittle, the ink faded, but the name was clear: Harland Blackthorn. Noah's hands went cold. Blackthorn. His name. He read the letter slowly, over and over, even though some parts were smeared. It was addressed to Thorn Vexmore, from Harland, Noah's father. The letter spoke of regret, of debt, and of a promise, to leave Ashbolt in Thorn's care, to keep him hidden, to protect him at any cost. "He's not just a horse," Harland had written. "He's what they want, and they'll come for him." Noah sat frozen for a long time. His father had known Ashbolt, had trusted Thorn. But then, why had no one told him? Why was his name erased, his history buried beneath dust and silence? He folded the letter, tucked it inside his shirt, and stepped into the rain. Lightning flashed across the pasture, casting shadows that twisted and reached like hands. Ashbolt stood in the field, soaked and still. When Noah called his name, the stallion turned, and for a moment the storm fell silent between them. Back at the house, Celine Grimsbane was waiting on the porch. She said nothing at first, just looked at Noah's soaked clothes and pale face. Then she whispered, "You found it, didn't you?" Noah didn't reply, but she nodded anyway. "You deserve the truth. But be careful, child. Truth around here, it doesn't always come clean." And as thunder cracked in the distance, Mira Dreadvale stared out the window of her clinic, holding an old photo in her hand. A photo of a man and a horse. The man's name was Harland Blackthorn, and the horse was unmistakably Ashbolt. By morning, the storm had passed, but its weight lingered like fog over the ranch. Noah stood by the fence, clutching the damp letter beneath his shirt. His mind raced. The name Harland Blackthorn didn't just belong to the man who vanished from his life. It now echoed through the land around him. Ashbolt nudged his shoulder gently, as if urging him forward, reminding him that silence wouldn't protect either of them any more. At the house, Thorn Vexmore sat at the kitchen table, sipping black coffee. Noah entered quietly and placed the letter on the table. Thorn looked down, unmoved at first, but as he read, the lines on his face deepened. "I told your father I'd keep the horse safe," he said slowly, voice like gravel. "Didn't promise I'd take care of the boy." Noah didn't flinch. "But you did," he said, "even if you didn't want to." Thorn exhaled. "You're your father's son, all right. Same fire. Same damn stubbornness." Across town, Jet Hollowridge slammed the door of his office, pacing like a man with too much to lose. He held a copy of the same letter. Someone had leaked it. He already knew the truth. Ashbolt was part of an old breeding line, one kept hidden after a deal gone bad between Harland and Vesper Ironridge. Ashbolt wasn't just valuable. He was proof. Proof of betrayal, and maybe even ownership. Jet picked up the phone. "We move now. Before the kid figures out how much he's worth." Back at the ranch, Celine Grimsbane lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. "They'll come for him," she said, watching the smoke curl into the warm air. "Ashbolt, and Noah too. That horse is legacy. And legacy gets ugly when men think it belongs to them." Thorn nodded, staring out the window. "Then we don't wait for them." He turned to Noah. "Saddle him. You're riding." Noah froze. "Where?" "To Mira," Thorn said. "She needs to see him. There's more she knows." Noah saddled Ashbolt with steady hands, the stallion calm under his touch. As they rode across the hills toward town, wind in his face and doubt in his chest, Noah couldn't help but feel the ground shifting beneath him. The truth was no longer hiding in barns and letters. It was galloping beside him now. A past written in hooves and blood. And from the ridge above, Talon Crowhurst watched silently, his long coat billowing in the wind. The preacher had seen many things in his years. But this? This was the beginning of something no prayer would be able to stop. Mira Dreadvale opened the barn doors before Noah even dismounted. Her sharp eyes flicked from him to Ashbolt, and then back again. "You didn't come just to say hello," she said. Noah nodded silently and handed her the letter. She read it slowly, her jaw tightening as she took in the words. "I knew Harland was hiding something," she whispered. "I just didn't realize it was alive and breathing right in front of me." She walked slowly around Ashbolt, running her hand along his spine, stopping near an old scar shaped like a jagged lightning bolt. "This mark," she said, "it's not from a whip or a fence. It's a brand. But not a ranch brand, it's something older." Noah looked at her, confused. "Like what?" Mira stepped back, her face pale. "Like a bloodline. One that was supposed to be extinct after the Hollow Ridge Ironridge dispute." Noah's heart pounded. He could feel the weight of the saddle under him, but it might as well have been the whole town pressing down on his shoulders. "So, Ashbolt, he's proof?" Mira nodded. "He's proof of a breeding experiment both families buried. He's not just a horse. He's a threat to the kind of men who build their legacies on lies." Her voice softened. "And so are you." At that moment, tires screeched outside. Noah ran to the window and saw 2 trucks pulling up fast, Jet Hollowridge's and a second one marked with Vesper Ironridge's brand. "They're here," Noah said. Myra's expression darkened. "Get on him. Out the back gate. Ride to the old chapel. Find Talon Crowhurst. Tell him everything. He'll know what to do. Noa hesitated, but Mira grabbed his arm. Go. You don't get second chances in this town, Noa. Ashbolt seemed to know it too. The moment Noa mounted, the horse bolted through the side pasture, tearing through wild grass like fire through dry timber. Shouts echoed behind them, men yelling, doors slamming, engines roaring. But Noa didn't look back. His eyes were fixed on the ridge ahead, on the broken steeple rising in the distance. The wind stung his face, and his fingers clutched the reins until his knuckles turned white. As they rode, storm clouds began to gather again, thick and low. And somewhere behind them, deep in the shadows of that barn, Mira stood alone with Vesper and Jet stepping closer. "You can try to erase history," she muttered under her breath, "but it always finds a way to ride back." The old chapel stood like a forgotten sentinel on the edge of the hills, its steeple half collapsed, its windows covered in dust and ivy. Noa pulled Ashbolt to a halt near the crumbling steps, heart racing. The silence was heavy here, too heavy. "Talon?" he called out, dismounting. Inside, the air was thick with dust and candle wax. The pews were cracked, and a rusted cross hung askew above the altar. Then, from the shadows, Talon Crowhurst emerged, cloak fluttering behind him like a spectre from another time. "You brought the storm with you," Talon said, his voice low and even. Noa handed him the letter. "It's all true," he said. "My father, the horse, they're part of something bigger. And they're coming for him." Talon read in silence, then folded the letter and tucked it into his coat. "This isn't just about land and bloodlines anymore," he said. "This is about power. What men will do to hold onto it. What others are willing to sacrifice to break it." From the hilltop, the dust cloud rose fast. 2 trucks, 3 riders on horseback. They were closing in. "You've got minutes," Talon said. "There's a trail behind the chapel that leads to Vexmoor's canyon. It's narrow, but Ashbolt can handle it. They won't risk following you there." Noa turned to go, but Talon placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember this. Legacy doesn't define you. What you choose to carry forward does." Back at the ranch, Celine Grimsbane stood in the doorway, blocking Jet and Vesper from entering. "Where is he?" Vesper growled. "Where's the horse?" Celine didn't move. "Out of your reach," she replied. "And if there's any decency left in you, you'll let the boy go." Jet stepped forward, eyes cold. "He's not just a boy anymore. He's a key. And Ashbolt is the lock." That's when Rowan Ashgrave arrived, badge glinting on his chest, hand resting on his holster. "I should have stopped this years ago," Rowan said, eyes on Vesper. "But I won't keep quiet any more. Harlan tried to warn us, and we buried him in lies. I'm done burying the truth." A tense silence followed. Vesper looked at him, face unreadable. "Then you've chosen your side." Meanwhile, Noa rode through the narrow canyon path, shadows stretching around him as evening fell. Ashbolt moved like a phantom, sure, fast, almost silent. Noa didn't know where this path would end. But he knew this, they wouldn't run forever. The next time they faced those men, it wouldn't be to escape. It would be to finish what Harlan started. By sunrise, Noa and Ashbolt reached the edge of Vexmore Canyon, the wind colder here, cutting through denim and skin. The path opened onto a flat plateau where Thorn was already waiting, standing beside a campfire that burned low, like a warning signal. "You made it," he said, his voice gruff but tinged with something gentler. Noa nodded, too tired to speak. Ashbolt stepped forward and rested his head against Thorn's chest. The old man placed a hand on the horse's neck and whispered something only the wind could hear. Thorn handed Noa a small leather pouch. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a silver locket. "This belonged to your mother," Thorn said. "She left it with Celine the day she disappeared. I was supposed to give it to you when you were ready. Noa opened it slowly. Inside was a photo, faded but unmistakable. His mother, Harland, and Ashbolt, smaller, but with the same fire in his eyes. Why did they leave? Noa asked. Thorn stared into the canyon. Because they knew what this town would do to keep its secrets. And they tried to keep you out of it. Below, in the valley, the dust began to rise again. Trucks. Riders. They were coming. You don't have to face them, Thorn said. We can disappear again. Just say the word. Noa shook his head. This time, they don't get to erase us. He looked at Ashbolt, then back at Thorn. We finish it. Like my father tried to. The weight of the past didn't feel as heavy now. It felt like armor. As they prepared, Talon Crowhurst arrived on horseback, his coat fluttering like a flag in the wind. Sheriff Ashgrave's delaying them at the ridge, he said. But they'll be here soon. Whatever you need to say it now. Mira Dreadvale followed close behind, with documents, old contracts, breeding records, and signed letters. This proves Ashbolt's lineage, Harlan's ownership, and the fraud Vesper buried. They formed a line at the canyon's edge. Noa stood with Ashbolt at his side, Thorn and Mira beside him, and Talon slightly behind, like a watchful shadow. They weren't armed with weapons, only truth. But for the first time, it felt like enough. The sun crept higher. The dust got closer. Every hoofbeat from below echoed the past. And when Jet Hollowridge and Vesper Ironridge came into view, faces set, eyes full of legacy and control, they didn't see a scared boy. They saw a Blackthorn. And the land remembered. The wind was still when the two groups finally met on the plateau. No guns were drawn, but the tension in the air crackled louder than any bullet. Vesper Ironridge sat tall on his horse, eyes narrowed on Noa. You think this ends with papers and sentiment? He said, voice cold. Jet Hollowridge stood beside him, arms crossed, jaw clenched. You're just a boy, he spat. You don't understand what this land is built on. Noa stepped forward, holding the letter from Harland in one hand and the breeding records in the other. I understand more than you think, he said. I know who I am. I know what Ashbolt is. And I know what you tried to hide. He looked directly at Vesper. You built this town on stolen blood and buried truths. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Not here. Not anymore. His voice didn't tremble. It rang out across the canyon like something sacred. Mira Dreadvale handed the documents to Rowan Ashgrave, who had just arrived on horseback, his badge glinting in the sunlight. He read them carefully, then looked up. It's all here, he said. Fraud. Concealment. Breach of ownership. Ashbolt was Harlan's, and Noa is his rightful heir. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then Jet turned his horse abruptly and rode off without a word. Vesper remained still, but the fight in his eyes faded. You think any of this changes the town? He muttered. No, Talon Crowhurst replied, stepping beside Noa. But it changes the boy. And maybe that's where it starts. Vesper gave one final glance toward Ashbolt, then turned and rode away, slower than Jet, but with the same weight of defeat on his shoulders. When the dust settled, Noa looked around at the faces beside him. Mira, Thorn, Talon, and even Rowan. He had come here with nothing. Now he stood with the truth, with family, and with the land beneath his boots no longer feeling like borrowed ground. Days later, at the old Vexmore barn, Noa hung a new sign above the gate, Blackthorn Ridge. Ashbolt ran freely across the open fields, his scars no longer hidden, but part of his strength. Thorn rebuilt the fences. Mira stayed on to tend the horses. And Celine Grimsbane, quiet as always, placed fresh flowers near the chapel ruins, where so many ghosts had finally found peace. Noah stood alone one evening, watching the sunset bleed across the sky. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't forgotten. He was the boy who raised his hand in a world that told him to stay silent. And now, the world would remember his name.